think this will do it. So, as usual, we'll start with 5 precepts. Hello.
Hello. Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you check if they can see me on the screen?
Yeah,
On the
it's
phone?
dark. I can tell. Yeah, if you're on there, it's just
Okay,
really dark.
that's what they get. So please turn to page 3 for precepts. And we'll do this in English. Homage to Him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. Homage to Him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. Homage to Him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened One. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dhamma, I take refuge in the Sangha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Buddha. For the second time, I take refuge in the Dhamma. For the second time, I take refuge in the Sangha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Buddha. For the third time, I take refuge in the Dhamma. For the third time, I take refuge in the Sangha. I undertake the precept to abstain from harming living beings. I undertake the precept to abstain from taking what is not given. I undertake the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct. I undertake the precept to abstain from false speech. I undertake the precept to abstain from intoxicating drinks and drugs that lead to heedlessness. Thank you. We are going to Majjhima Nikaya number 31, the shorter discourse in Gosinga. Gosinga is a forest. There are many monks went to meditate. It was a quiet place. They enjoyed being there. And usually the description about the place goes as a place remote from village and people. And that's an ideal place for meditation for monks. And this is also found in the middle length discourses of the Buddha. And in this particular sutta, we find that 3 monks went to meditate and they achieved what they wanted. And later on, the Buddha visited these monks and asked about their practice. And we find their answers in this discussion. And you will learn few interesting things as we go along with the discussion, and you are free to ask questions. And at the end of this, we will have a Q&A session where we will discuss about anything starting from how this relates to your life and how this relates to your social life out there. I mean, personally and socially, how you will find meaning in these discussions. Any questions? Thus have I heard, this is Venerable Ananda saying usually. So all these teachings are from Ananda. If not from Ananda, we will not have any of these teachings now. So we should be very grateful for this. Is like Ananda's. This is how he remembered. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Nagika. Nadika in the brick house. So this is where the Buddha was dwelling at that time. Nadika in the brick house. It's interesting that they used to build houses using bricks at that time. Now, on that occasion, the Venerable Anuruddha, the Venerable Nandiya, and the Venerable Kimbila. So these are three names, Anuruddha, Nandiya, and Kimbila, were living at the park of the Gosinga Sala Treewood. This is a natural park, unlike the parks we find nowadays. Usually they are not natural. In some sense, we build those parks. Then, when it was the evening, the Blessed One rose from meditation. So, in the evening, the Blessed One was doing his usual meditation, and then he finished his meditation, he rose from it, and went to the park of the Gosinga Sala Treewood. The park keeper saw the Blessed One coming in the distance and told him, "Do not enter this park. Recluse, there are 3 clansmen here seeking their own good. Do not disturb them." Now, this is interesting. Now, this is the Buddha trying to enter to this park, and the gatekeeper did not see anything special about the Buddha. He was just an ordinary monk. And the gatekeeper was pleased about the 3 monks meditating in the park. It sounds like he wanted to support their meditation, and he didn't want just another monk entering this place and disturbing their practice. And that tells that these monks were really they had good conduct and they pleased the gatekeeper at least. And the gatekeeper must have been observing what these monks were doing, and he must have seen that these monks were meditating most of the time. And even at this point, he must have thought, "Oh, there's someone coming. Let me stop him from entering this forest." So there was a gatekeeper. That's also interesting. Unlike parks here, there's a gate. There's an entrance, but not a gatekeeper here. So that says that this belonged to a king or a special someone at that time. So they didn't want just anyone entering this forest except monks, but even at this point the Buddha was not allowed. And then also said something different, something interesting, seeking their own good. These monks were seeking their own good. That's why you meditate. And that way you are helping others. When you are peaceful, you find your surrounding peaceful as well. Or if your surrounding is not peaceful, you can still find peace within you. Whether you are alone or with a group. So this meditation, the kind of meditation that the Buddha taught, was for people to find their own good within them, that you cultivate loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy and equanimity, and you radiate these qualities to beings around you in the world, in the universe, and they also benefit from your practice. Now, what happened next is this. The Venerable Anuruddha, so one of the monks, heard that the park keeper speaking to the Blessed One and told him, "Friend park keeper, do not keep the Blessed One out. It is our teacher, the Blessed One, who has come." Then the Venerable Anuruddha went to the Venerable Nandiya and the Venerable Kimbila and said, "Come out, Venerable Sirs, come out. Our teacher, the Blessed One, has come." So it's good that Venerable Anuruddha overheard the conversation, and I heard the voice of the Buddha and said, "Do not stop him. He is our teacher, let him come." Then all three went to meet the Blessed One. One took his bowl and outer robe, one prepared a seat, and one set out water for washing the feet. The Buddha walked barefoot, bare feet. The Blessed One sat down on the seat made ready and washed his feet. Then the Blessed One sat down on the seat made ready, and someone washed his feet. Then those three venerable ones paid homage to the Blessed One and sat down at one side. When they were seated, the Blessed One said to them, "I hope you are all keeping well, Anuruddha." So Anuruddha seems to be the leading monk, like 3 months living here in this center. "I hope you all are comfortable. I hope you are not having any trouble getting alms food." I wish the Buddha comes and visit us and ask these questions from us. So Anuruddha responds, "We are keeping well, Blessed One. We are comfortable and we are not having any trouble getting alms food." So people seem to offer them alms food when they go out for alms. Next we find 5 interesting ways the Buddha wanted these monks to live. And this is why I remember this discourse. As I share these teachings with people and I tell them, as a community, anyone can remember these 5 qualities and learn to live with anybody with this kind of attitude. And the Buddha is asking, "I hope, Anuruddha, that you are all living in concord." That's the number 1 quality. Concord means samagra, living harmoniously, with mutual appreciation, sammodamana, rejoicing in each other's activity, appreciating them. "Oh, thank you for doing this, how nice." That kind of appreciation. Without disputing, avivadamana, without disputing. You have to argue, you don't have to argue. You just talk to them and ask questions in an appropriate way at a suitable time, and the person don't feel offended the way you ask questions. You find the nicest words. Or you use sandwich method, like you put a layer and then you praise the person and then you put something in middle and then you close with another layer. So you're very mindful of how you will start the conversation and what you will say, and then how you will close the conversation. So you are prepared to talk. You are not just going to open your mouth and say what you want to say. That may not end very well. For a couple of days you may not talk to each other if you are not mindful. So that is mutual, without disputing. And the 4th quality is blending like milk and water. Kiro the kibhuta. So when milk and water combined, it's hard to separate the two. Now we have machineries to separate those, I think. But in general, you can't just tell if there is water in the milk, in fresh milk, unless somebody told you we added water into this milk. So when milk and water mixed, it still takes a white color. So live like that, like blend. Just understand each other's, I would say, shortcomings, and tolerate them. It's very hard because we won't always have a tendency to correct others, saying you are not clean, you are not keeping your space nicely, or we always want to correct. We don't see our own faults, but we correct If three monks were to live in a forest, and still they may find things to complain about. So the Buddha is asking, are you living without any disputes and blending like milk and water? And the last quality is viewing each other with kindly eyes. Anyamanyang hi piyachakko hi pasanta. So kindly eyes, pleasant eyes. You just look at the next person or the other monk with a pleasant look. Um, by the look, you can tell if the person is angry or burning in their eyes. So it's nice to look with, like some people smile with their eyes. If they have a pleasant attitude in their being, their eyes are also smiling. So these five qualities, the Buddha is asking, do you live like this harmoniously? Uh, so Anuruddha's response, surely, Venerable Sir, we are living in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. Then the Buddha doesn't stop there, he asks, but Anuruddha, how do you live that? So this is a general question, like, tell me, give me an example. Venerable Sir, as to that, I think that it's a gain for me. It's a great gain for me, so beneficial that I am living with such companions in the holy life. I maintain bodily acts of loving kindness towards those venerable ones, both openly and privately. You can be very kind openly, but not privately. So this is a place where this monk says, even when I am secluded, I still have compassionate attitude towards these monks. I maintain verbal acts of loving kindness towards them, both openly and privately. I maintain mental acts of loving kindness towards them, both openly and privately. I consider, why should I not set aside what I wish to do and do what these venerable ones wish to do? So instead of you wanting to do what you want to do, you are doing what they want you to do. You at least find out what they want and you help. We are different in body, Venerable Sir, but one in mind. How nice. The Venerable Nandiya and the Venerable Kimbila each spoke likewise, adding, that is how, Venerable Sir, we are living in concord with mutual appreciation, without disputing, blending like milk and water, viewing each other with kindly eyes. Good, good, Anuruddha. I hope that you all abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. So this is again the Buddha entering to their practice, real practice. Like you live diligent, ardent, and resolute. Surely, Venerable Sir, we abide diligent, ardent, and resolute. But Anuruddha, how do you abide thus? So the Buddha asks even um, one more question, a counter question. Venerable Sir, as to that, whichever of us returns first from the village with alms food, prepare the seats, sets out the water for drinking and for washing, and puts the refuse bucket in its place, whichever of us returns last, eats any food left over if he wishes, otherwise he throws it away where there is no greenery or drops it into water where there is no life. He puts away the seeds and the water for drinking and for washing. He puts away the refuse bucket after washing it, and he sweeps out the refectory. Whoever notices that the pots of water for drinking, washing, or the latrine are low, or care of them. If they are too heavy for him, he calls someone else by a signal of the hand, and they move it by joining hands. But because of this, we do not break out into speech. They kept silence. This is very hard. When people come for retreat, we tell them, okay, stop, like be silent, practice silence. No, as soon as we start talking, we hear loud noises, laughters, and all that. So they are silent, but every 5 days we sit together all night discussing the Dhamma. So all night, such dedicated monks. So when it comes, they prepare for this. Like every 5 days, they check with each other about their practice and how they experience things, and compliment each other. And it goes all night. They don't really feel tired. Even nowadays in Burma and in some places in Sri Lanka and in Thailand, monks give Dharma talks overnight, and people listen and join. They enjoy, but they are very short breaks. And I think even here we have done overnight chantings, but not overnight Dhamma talks. So that has been there for a long time. So this is an example to that in the Buddha's time, from the Buddha's time. Good. But while you abide thus diligent, ardent, and resolute, have you attained any superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones, a comfortable abiding? So, have you attained anything that noble ones can experience? Are you a noble one by now? In his response, Anuruddha says, why not, Venerable Sir? Here, whenever we want, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, we enter upon and abide in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. Venerable Sir, this is a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones, a comfortable abiding, which we have attained while abiding diligent, ardent, and resolute. So, secluded from sensual pleasures. What does that mean?
entertainment and
Yeah. Seeing, tasting, physical sensations, and thinking, all of these are not about sensual pleasures. They are there, you can see if you want, but you're not indulging in anything in this state. And from unwholesome states, means the 5 hindrances, very close to sensual pleasures. This could mean any unwholesome state of the mind. Sensual pleasures, you can have aversion as a hindrance, and sloth and torpor as a hindrance, that you fall asleep before long, and doubt can be a hindrance, that you don't know whether this is the right way to practice. So you experience another hindrance, which is restlessness. You feel restless, because you get into thinking about something, or somehow you find something to be restless on. That could also be a habit that people cannot break. You get into habits, and you want the meditation to be just as how it was yesterday, and then you become restless when it doesn't happen that way. So this Anuruddha is speaking about himself and also speaking about others, uh, because he's saying whenever we want. So when they were checking with each other every 5 days, I think they must have shared each other's experience. So they enter the first jhana, and they all can do that. So secluded from these states, um, we enter upon and abide in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought. You apply your thought and sustain it on breathing, for example, and that's all you focus on. And there is rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. You are secluded now from so many things, and there is rapture and pleasure that arises, conditioned by that seclusion. Because when you go to the second jhana, as you'll find out in a minute, the rapture and pleasure is born from samadhi, concentration, stillness, little bit advanced from the previous experience. Anuruddha. But is there any other superhuman state? A distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones? A comfortable abiding which you have attained by surmounting that abiding, by making that abiding subside? So intentionally you make a decision to enter to a higher state by also seeing that you may fall into either five hindrances or sensual pleasures if you stay in the first jhana too long. So then you focus on the second jhana and its qualities, and you stay in the second jhana, so you will fall anytime you can fall into the first jhana, but that's not like falling into five hindrances or to five sensual pleasures, because there is a danger in there that when you get caught in any of those, you will not be able to enter into any of the jhanas. Yeah?
What is jhana?
Jhana literally is translated into English as an absorption in the mind. When I first learned this word in English, there was a translation called for the first jhana, it was first ecstasy. E-C-A-C-Y,
Oh,
ecstasy. And that, I think, says that it's a blissful state of the mind which has this pleasure and what is the other one? Pleasure and rapture, a joy, piti sukha, joy and pleasure that you experience just because of your practice, that you condition these qualities to rise. So jhana or dhyana in Pali is a higher state of mind where you find such amount of peace and you enter in there and you dwell as long as you wish, when you have the mastery over it. And Buddha usually, in almost every discourse, encourage his students to experience these, because they lead you toward ultimate peace, in ultimate liberation and freedom from bonding. And nowadays in Sri Lanka and in Buddhist countries, people think that jhanas are not possible these days. They were possible at the time of the Buddha, but not anymore. So people are discouraged that nobody talks about these things. It's very rare. Or even if someone were to talk about this, people doubt that this person entered anything. Um, and also for monks, there's a rule that says that disclosing your attainments openly um, can be you are breaking a rule if you are disclosing these attainments, and some monks are saying that you are breaking a rule if you are disclosing anything that you don't have. Just to please people, you will say, oh, I have attained this and I have attained that, please follow me, kind of monks. There could be such monks. And I always recommend anybody who has attained anything to not share it. Like if someone were to say, oh, I am an arahant, so you have to live the rest of your life proving that you are an arahant. So you rather not say it. Because sometimes people then want you to be the prime example, the best person of everything. And well, you are not, because you may make mistakes. You haven't, just learned everything about the world, or that's not necessary when you become an arahant, or fully enlightened, or completely someone clean in your heart, that you have eradicated all your defilements, kind of a person. So, well, you can, so when Ajahn Chah, for example, he's a famous Thai monk, and people always wanted to call him an arahant. Someone, one of his good students, a good donor to his monastery, asked a question like, are you an arahant? People say you are an arahant. And he said, I'm just like a tree in a forest. And people can say anything they want. And you find a tree in forest, birds land in branches and enjoy its fruits. And some birds will say it's bitter, some birds will say it's sour taste, some birds will say it's sweet. And to the tree, it's just a noise. That was his response. So very interesting way to answer this kind of, it's a tricky, so he was a tricky monk. But I think I shared this in a different discussion, that when you follow any teacher, you always want to say that, oh, my teacher is so good. He has supernatural superhuman skills, that he can do this, he can do that. So that's because people want to believe in the teacher. And nowadays we have more believers than seekers. In Buddha's time, there were more seekers than believers. People had the freedom to question and seek what they want, and go to any teacher and get what they want. Well, nowadays we have that freedom, but people are fallen into dittis, views. The Discourse of Loving Kindness, always, we hear that he's saying, dittincha anupagama, do not fall into views. Usually these are erroneous views that are wrong. Because when you fall into one of these, you will hardly overcome it. Because you want to prove it, you want to defend it, and you are not open to any other teachings. And where were we? We are in the second jhana now. Are we?
Yes.
Not for as the experience, but we are in the sutra, we are in the second jhana discussion. So they are sharing with the Buddha. And now, whenever we want, with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, you still the applied and sustained thought. So this is like a thought, so you are free from thoughts. We enter upon and abide in the second jhana, and there is rapture and pleasure born out of jhana, out of samadhi, out of concentration. And then he continues, because the Buddha asks, is that it? Then he says, with the fading away of as well of the rapture, we enter upon and abide in the third jhana. And then is that it? With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, we enter upon and abide in the fourth jhana. So he continues to say that he enters all these jhanic states. I think in a previous discussion we discussed about different, we discussed the jhanas in detail. So usually in the third jhana, there is equanimity and your pleasure, there is no such strong pleasure that you're feeling is fading away, and then it kind of makes a path for you to enter the fourth jhana, which is fully a state of equanimity, and you are mindful on equanimity at this moment. There is mindfulness based on equanimity. So you are really mindful on that balanced state of your mind. The third jhana is called the noble silence, because it's a thought-free silence, that your mind is not even busy with thoughts, kind of a state. So these monks were they were skilled enough to enter to these states. Good. But is there any other superhuman state which you have attained by and surmounting that abiding, by making that abiding subside? So the fourth jhana is subsiding and you are entering something. So are you able to enter to something even superior? Why not, Venerable Sir? Whenever we want, with the complete surmounting of perceptions of form, with the disappearance of perceptions of sensory impact, so you are completely abandoning any forms. What are the forms here? Like, you are not cognizing any form, or you are not visually seeing anything, or capturing any sounds, or even trying to identify a smell or taste or any physical sensation here. All these are different ways to experience some kind of form. So you are labeling things, naming things, just because of these sensory experiences. So you are completely free from any perception whatsoever of any form, and with the disappearance of perceptions of sensory impact, so sensory impact disappears now. This is like a floating experience. You are free from bodily contact, but you are not floating. With non-attention to perceptions of differences, so you are not identifying different things, aware that space is infinite. There's one thing here though, space, avakasha, space. We enter upon and abide in the base of infinite space. Good. Anything more? Why not, Venerable Sir? Whenever we want, by completely abandoning the base of infinite space, aware that consciousness is infinite. So you are completely focusing on space now, and now you are letting the space be, but you are now focusing on consciousness, because in order to be focusing on space you have to be conscious. So now you are thinking about, not really thinking, but paying attention to consciousness aspect of it. That for you to be cognized, be aware of a space, there should be consciousness. So you are saying, because if the space can be infinite, then your consciousness can be infinite as well. So this is a state that they enter upon and abide whenever they want. And then the next they enter upon and abide in the place of nothingness. Not even space, not even consciousness, there is nothing. And you enter to that state called nothingness. And then completely surmounting, abandoning that state, you enter upon and abide in neither perception nor non-perception. So you don't even take nothingness as a perception. And you may as well take neither perception nor non-perception as a perception. And if you can let go of that, there's such a freedom. You're very close to attaining Nibbana, complete freedom from any bonding. This is another superhuman state which we have attained by surmounting the preceding abiding, by making that abiding subside. Good, good. But now the Buddha is asking, is there any other superhuman state that you have attained and that you abide by? Why not, Venerable Sir? Here, whenever we want, by completely abandoning neither perception nor non-perception, we enter upon and abide in the cessation of perception and feeling. So, no perception, no feeling, that also suggests that there's nothing to be conscious on. When there's nothing to be conscious on, this person who was always conscious on something disappears. At which point, after emerging from this experience, any person can understand that, oh, there was a break of continuity. There was always something to be conscious on, but now with this practice you saw that even consciousness had, when it didn't have anything else to be conscious, anything to be conscious on, it this is, I think, the highest degree you can get in Buddhism in terms of your not materially, but in terms of your practice. You go to ultimate cessation experience. So who is you here then? You find out there is no you in the first place. This is why in Visuddhimagga you say, he said, the Buddha, Venerable Buddha says, the path is there is no traveler. Nibbana is there is no one enters into it. Contemplate on that. The path is there's no traveler. Nibbana is there's no one enters into it. Because people think that Nibbana is a place, or it's a higher realm, or some star kind of a place. You just find out from these teachings that it's not such a thing. It's just an experience you can. It's an experience of a non-experience in a way. We don't find words in Sammuti world, in ordinary world to describe this experience. The Buddha even didn't attempt to, because such thing. So, this is distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones, a comfortable abiding which we have attained and we abide in it. So you can, if you have the mastery, you can spend 7 days on end in this, inside this, you're free from any. If there is a flood 7 feet above you, you will not die. When on the 7th day you emerge from it, you will still be safe. If there was a fire around you, you will still be safe. So such praise is given to this attainment, that whoever enters into these states survives any dangerous situation. So try that when people in news channels say world is going to end, so stay in the Nirodha, in the cessation experience. 7 days, turn on the TV, you'll be fine. Good, Anuruddha. Now the Buddha is saying there is no other comfortable abiding higher or more sublime than that one. The Buddha is saying. Such a comfortable abiding. Then when the Blessed One had instructed, urged, roused and gladdened the Venerable Anuruddha, Nandiya and Kimbila with a talk on the Dhamma, he rose from his seat and departed. After they had accompanied the Blessed One a little way and turned back again, the Venerable Nandiya and Kimbila asked Anuruddha, have we ever reported to the Venerable Anuruddha that we have obtained those abidings and attainments that the Venerable Anuruddha in the Blessed One's presence ascribed to us up to the destruction of the taints? They didn't clearly report that. Maybe he understood from the discussions. So he says, the Venerable Ones have never reported to me that they have obtained these. I know that they have obtained those abidings and attainments from my own mind. So I have seen your minds with my own mind. And again he says, the deities have also reported to me. So there were deities blessing or observing what these monks were doing. And they also reported to me. So this is saying that deities somehow had a way to know who is a person who has ended the path. These Venerable Ones have obtained those abidings and attainments. Then I declared it when directly questioned by the Blessed One. So, we are almost coming to an end here. Then the spirit Diga Parajana, name of a spirit, went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to the Blessed One, he stood at one side and said, it's a gain for Vajjins. Vajjins is a clan, very clever people. Venerable Sir, a great gain for the Vajjins people that the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, dwells among them. And these 3 clansmen, the Venerable Anuruddha, Nandiya and Venerable Kimbila. So among Vajjins, Venerable Sir, these 3 monks live. It's such a gain for these people. On hearing the exclamation of the spirit Diga Parajana, the earth gods exclaimed, it is, so earth gods here, they are close to earth, or tree gods. It is a gain for the Vajjins, a great gain for Vajjins people that the Tathagata and these venerable monks dwell among them. And then upon hearing them, the 4 great kings, the heavenly kings, also report, exclaimed that. So there are 4 great kings in Buddhist culture or in Buddhist literature that they are watching the world, watching the universe. They are guardian kings. And then they say the same thing. And when they said that the gods of heaven of 33, and then Yama gods, and then the gods in Tusita heaven, and then gods who delight in creating, the gods who wield power over other creation, the gods of Brahma's retinue, and they also said the same thing. It's a gain for Vajjins, a gain for Vajjin people that the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened ones, dwells among them. And these 3 clansmen, the Venerable Anuruddha, Venerable Nandiya and the Venerable Kimbila, are also dwelling among them. So the Buddha responds, yes, Diga. And if the clan from which those 3 clansmen went forth from the home life into homeless should remember them with confident heart that would lead to the welfare and happiness of that clan for a long time. So it's beneficial for this clan, and they should remember these monks for a long, and that if that remembrance will be beneficial to these people. So the Buddha is saying all Brahmins, all merchants, all workers should remember these three monks, and all the people with its gods, the evil ones, Brahmas, this generation with its recluses and Brahmins, princes and its people should remember these three monks. See, Viga, how those three monks are practicing for the welfare and happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the good welfare and happiness of gods and humans. That is what the Blessed One said. The spirit Diga Parajana was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So that's the end of the discourse. And in the beginning, we found that these monks were practicing for their own benefit. But at the end, we find that they were also beneficial for heavenly beings, because they rejoice in such virtuous conduct. It's rare that monks in that type who are dedicated to real pureness in their minds, and they live harmoniously in public and in private lives. So, any questions? Cūḷagosinga Sutta, number 31 of Majjhima Nikaya. What I remember all the time from this sutra is how harmoniously these monks lived, and how the Buddha praised them for that kind of abiding, and how the Buddha questioned these monks, and this one monk reports everything about other monks, and then they question him like, why did you report about us? We didn't tell you about these things. So he is responding that, oh, I saw from my own mind, and also deities reported me, and that they were silent when they were dwelling. They didn't have to talk. So Mauna Vrta is one of the practices that monks kept at that time, where they discuss and they go to a forest and they don't really break silence. So that way you can avoid a lot of chatter, idle chatter, right? You just entertain in talking about the king or talking about politics, Trump or anything. That's pointless. But when you all agree on that kind of practice to keep silence, no talking. So once you finish your meal, you are silent, no one is going to disturb you. You go and sit somewhere and do your practice. And there's nothing exciting that you feel like you have to share this with someone. Because we always have this lonely feeling inside us that we want to talk to someone, we want to share with something about someone. Then we feel like, oh, your day went well, that you have friendship. But this says that that's not necessary. If you make an agreement with yourself and with others that you want to practice silence, verbal silence, and that leads you to silence in your mind, and then you are driven towards higher experiences in mind, from the first jhana to the second, and second to the third to the fourth, and then to the infinite space, then to the infinite consciousness, and then to infinite to nothingness, and then to neither perception nor non-perception. So 4 jhanas and 4 other attainments, and then complete cessation experience. Perception and feelings. Perceptions and feelings sees, consciousness also sees, and formations, any thoughts, anything that is formed also ceases. There is no experiencer that you have formed an experiencer in your experience, that you believe that there is I, there is a person, but that also disappears. Scary, right?
Yeah.
This is why when I told non-self in Europe to university students, they said it's easier to believe that there is a self than trying to understand that there is no self. They said so. So they choose the easy thing. But that's why when we go to teach in these places, unless they ask a question about these things, we don't really talk about deep Dhamma. Even in the Buddha's first discourse, he didn't teach about non-self teachings until the 5 disciples were ready to it. So he had to sit close to them and instruct them on how to understand the teaching of non-self nature. He basically went on teaching that take this I, for example, and you know it came when you were born and it dies when you die. You cannot tell that this is you. This I is not you. So then he tells, okay, look at any form that you cognize. And it also comes and disappears. And another form comes and disappears. So they all arise and pass away. And that's not you arising and passing away. So then I consciousness, take that. So you become conscious on something. That also arises and passes away. So that's not you. Then take your ear, do the same thing. Take your nose, do the same thing. Take your tongue, do the same thing. Body and mind. So when you break all these experiences into pieces, you don't really see a person arising and passing away, just different little things arising and passing away. Like a cart put together, then you say it's a cart, but when scattered, when pieces are separate, you don't really see a cart in there. A wheel, a motor vehicle, you don't really see a vehicle when all the pieces are, separated. So this is a simple way the Buddha taught how to understand that the self-view is a mind-made thing. Because when all these things, yeah.
Sorry. Did I cut you off?
I think you will still.
I was just wondering,
yeah.
So then the personality comes with the genetic entity, and then that's just a package that's got nothing to do with your specific. There's no individual energy, then it's just.
Yeah, keep yourself undefined.
Yeah.
I'm still playing in the safe grounds here, not going deep into the waters. If you are a supervisor of a company, every time you think as the supervisor, you are superior.
Yeah.
But when you look at everybody just as a co-worker, you are always a co-worker. Because when you are defining yourself as a supervisor, you are putting yourself different. You're looking at yourself differently from others. But genetic formation of a personality is just a part of formation of one personality. There can, like for me, in my family, not everyone has a monk personality. So that came from my practice, from my being around with people, and a lot of things, culture, many things. So my personality is so different from anyone else in my family. So I can't tell directly that it all came from genes of my parents. So based on what we experience. Your hand went up.
Yeah, I actually want to add to that. There's
Yeah.
some of that from like your environment too, like how you.
Yeah.
You know.
Definitely. environment, like how kids are, like that's why parents put a lot of emphasis on how to raise their kids, who to be, where should they grow up, what city, what school should they go to, and you know these things. That environment adds a lot to the language, to the personality of the person. And if you grew up in a music family, you tend to be okay with big crowds and seeing popular people, or you're okay with. But someone who has never come out from their village, haven't seen any of these people, they feel nervous as soon as they come to big crowds. Different experiences really add into it, of course. There's a lot that comes with genes. That's a mystery. But I think that here, this is in deep Dhamma, the Buddha is saying that don't believe in a personal self identity, that there is I in here. So just look at how you can dissolve this person into pieces and not find a person in that experience. Face. Is that a question?
Mine?
Yes.
Actually, I had a question because I thought that the problem is that intentionally or unintentionally we need to cling to something, isn't it?
Not that we need to, we tend to.
I mean, we tend to, yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, in our case, it's we need to, it seems, rather tend to. Oh, unconsciously, I
When
would
you
say.
said in our case,
Yeah, if you
talking
try
about-
to take our things away,
Yeah.
then you see, no, I need that. That is your clinging, right?
yes, but then some people need little more than what they really need. That's
Yeah.
because they have built a personality of a person who may, who has fears that they may end up getting into trouble if they don't have this thing or that thing around them. So you develop some obsessive compulsiveness along with that fear or nervousness inside you.
So that clinging is because of the self. Oh, I.
Yes, because of this self. Because now we need to put this into the. So do we have time? It's 8:33. We will finish. But this last thing I should say. In Buddha's time, there were different teachers, very popular, who were teaching that there is a permanent self and it's gonna join with a higher God called Brahma once you die, and just believe in that, that's enough. So it was easy for people, so they had many crowds because of that simple teaching. And then there were others who were equally popular, who used to teach that this self will continue for 10,000 years and that will be it. These teachers were popular. But then with meditation experience, the Buddha saw how experience become non-experience and how person or a personality dissolves in that experience. And then perfectly awakened into that understanding, he saw, people are sleeping and they take anything that others teach as the truth, but now this is the truth. Let me teach this to people. So that's what he taught. This tells how Buddhism or the Buddha's teachings came into being. Non-self-teaching is a big deal. Anyway, let's end the discussion for the day. Let's go to page 6 as usual and read the Gatha. The avoiding of evil, the doing of good, the purification of the mind, this is the Buddha's teaching. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for coming. So I think we are now giving these talks live, and if in any case you are not able to get here, it's best if I have, so I think I have all your emails, so I will be sending a link out maybe by Monday. If you are not able to get here, you will be able to watch it online. But I expect some people to be here, otherwise the discussion will be me talking to the walls here. So, so thank you for coming. Happy meditation.